Good morning, everyone. I'm going to call this meeting to order. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. As directed by Manitoba Health, we're requesting people avoid close contact within 2 meters with anyone showing symptoms of a respiratory illness such as coughing or sneezing. If you are experiencing flu-like symptoms, we are requesting that you excuse yourself from the room. My name is Marla Billinghurst. I will be chairing the meeting this morning. With me today are Mr. Harvey Diamond and Mr. Robert Upton. Our secretary this morning is Ms. Michelle Neepin, and the city assessor is Mr. Jason Brown. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the Board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all of the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the Board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record, and use of cell phones is not permitted except by the approval of the chair. So I'm requesting that everyone please turn off their cell phones at this time. Thank you. Ms. Neepin, could you please swear in the parties?
Mr. Brown, we'll start with you. Mr. Brown, we'll start with you.
Okay.
Can you state your full name, please?
Jason Brown.
And do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Mr. Mercury, can you state your full name, please?
James Mercury.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld, can you state your full name, please?
Rocky Neufeld.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Brown, please proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is file number 20-819. Roll number is 10006777090, and the subject property is located at 700 Sterling Lion Parkway. This is the Hyatt Hotel, located on the south side of Sterling Lion Parkway, between Wilkes and Kenniston, near the IKEA and the Cabela's. This is a brand new hotel. It was completed in July 2020, and therefore I will be defending the 2020 assessment today. The assessment is currently set at $11,770,000. This is a 6-story hotel built in 2020, consisting of 210 licensed seats and 135 guest rooms. On page 2 of my evidence, There is a sale listed. This is the vacant land sale that was acquired for the construction of the hotel for just over $2 million. Of course, the reference date for this assessment is 2018, April 1st, 2018, so there are no financials for this statement as it was not operating at the time. Therefore, it's done on hypothetical numbers that are derived from comparable properties that we see in the marketplace. There'll be more information on that near the end of my evidence, which I'll go through. So we've used, on page 3 is my estimate of value by income approach. We've used $150 average daily room rate with a 60% occupancy. This generates a RevPAR, which is revenue per available night or per available room of $90. When we calculate that, that gives us our room revenue of $4,434,650. We've used $3,000 per licensed seat. They have 210 licensed seats. That generates a revenue of $630,000. And then the other at $55,000, which is just miscellaneous income. We've given the room expense 25% of the total revenue for rooms, which equals $1,110,000. The food and beverage cost and wages, we've used 35% and 40% of the food and beverage revenue. Admin in general, going down to the undistributed expenses, we've used a combined 16.5%. That includes the first 3 columns in the undistributed. Marketing at 4%, energy and water at 4%, repair and maintenance at 3%, and then the management fees and FF&E reserve, these are standard deductions for hotels. It's part of the calculation to remove the business value of the assessment. And then the franchise fees at 5%. The fixed expenses, we've used 1% of revenue for the business tax and 4.5% for property tax and 1% for insurance. This gives us our net operating income of $1,177,025. We've capitalized that at 25%. And then we further reduced it by 15% for furniture, fixture, and equipment deduction, which the reasoning behind that is we're not assessing the furniture, fixtures, and equipment. So we deduct for that. This gives us our total value of $11,770,000. On the next page, page 4, we have some capitalization rates. I've highlighted the relevant section at the bottom. So we have 3 types of hotels: urban full service, select focus service, and limited service. We can see the urban full service ranges. The city uses a range from 8.5 to 10. And to the right of that, we can see the outside sources. Colliers uses a range of 7 3/4 to 9 1/4. CBRE uses 7 3/4 to 9. And Cushman Wakefield uses 8 to 10. So we've used 8.5. We're well within the range shown on the outside sources. And at the bottom end of the Winnipeg internal cap rates that we use. Starting on page 7, I have some photographs. The top just shows the location, which I've mentioned, right near IKEA between Kenaston and Wilkes. Aerial photograph below that. Exterior photograph at the top of page 8. And then I have various interior photographs starting with the lobby, page 8 and 9, the restaurant. Restaurant at the top of page 10, boardroom space on page 11 and 12, fitness and pool on page 13, and then just various room configurations going forward. This is a suites hotel. A lot of these rooms contain kitchens, separate bedrooms, etc. They market themselves as extended stay for business travelers and etc. Page 19 just shows some of the amenities. that are provided by the hotel, free parking, high-speed internet, gym, pool, free breakfast, etc., air conditioning, room service. Page 20 and 21, this shows the investors brochure. We can see on page 20, they show an index for occupancy costs, ADR index, and RevPAR index. This is simply an index done by STR hotels. Anything above 100 means it's above average. So we can see that those three items are all above average compared to other hotels that an investor might be looking at. And then just some other of their brand style on the following page, on page 21. Once again, this is a long stay suites hotel, so they say use words like home, away from home, and extended stay. Page 22 and 23, I have two permits here. The first permit on page 22 was taken out in February of 2018. This is the permit for the foundation of the hotel, and we can see the declared construction value for that permit is $9 million. The following page, page 23, this is for the actual construction of the hotel. We can see the description: Hyatt House Hotel, 6-story, 9,358 square meters, 135 rooms. This was taken out in May 2018. And we can see the total project value, middle, bottom right. Total project value is $20 million. Declared construction value is $19,100,000. Page 24 and 25 show some plan layouts of the hotel and the site plan. On page 26, I have a suite breakdown showing that of the 135 units, 85 include kitchenette suites, and 50 are non-kitchenette suites. So the majority of the rooms are suites and do contain kitchens for the extended stay. I have a newspaper article from page 27 to 33. So a lot of this just goes into some of the difficulties they've had starting a hotel during this time, but that they're optimistic that it will rebound. Outside sources that we've seen are showing that they're anticipating a 3 to 5 year rebound for hotels. But once again, the reference date for this hotel is April 1st, 2018. So we will not get into that on my behalf. On page 29, it does show that their nightly rates range from $139 to $199. And then on page 31, they do say that the entire development cost $25 million to build. I would assume the discrepancy between that and the permit would include the furniture and fixtures and equipment, just the cost to furnish it and buy all the equipment required to run a hotel. On page 34, we have our evaluation of hotels. This is our City of Winnipeg guidelines for the evaluation of hotels that we use. So on page 37, under revenues, we can see hotels have an average daily rate of $118.73. This is for the entire portfolio of hotels that we received information on. So pretty wide range of hotels. Some of them are a lot older compared to this, which of course is a lot newer or brand new. You can see the occupancy rate at 68.74. So we've used 60%, kind of attributing that to the startup of the new hotel. So a slightly lower occupancy rate. And the RevPAR at $82. I believe we were at $90. So pretty close to the average of the entire portfolio of the city, even though this is a brand new hotel. Food and beverage per licensed seat, the average was $3,193 per licensed seat. We've used $3,000 for this hotel, and there are no VLTs in this hotel. Turning to the next page, page 38. This is where a lot of those percentages in my income workup were derived from. So we can see rooms at 30%, food and beverage costs and wages at 37 and 45% respectively. A&G at 19.5, marketing at 4, energy and water at 4.5, repair and maintenance at 5.5, management fees and FF&E reserve are standard 4 and 3%, and the business tax at 1%, property tax at 4.5%, and insurance at 1%. You'll see these percentages mimic pretty closely what we've used for the income workup. There were some adjustments because of the newness of the hotel. Obviously, the repair and maintenance would be lower on a newer hotel, etc. So based on that, we're asking that the assessment be confirmed at $11,770,000 and open for questioning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Neufeld, Ms. Mercury, do you have questions for the assessor?
Yes, I'll start off with questions. Excuse me. What's the effective date of the supplemental?
August 1st, 2020.
August 1st, and they opened July 24th?
That was their ribbon cutting. I believe it was July 23rd.
Okay.
But they do mention that they were renting some rooms before that.
Okay, so roughly a week before, they may have opened for business a week before the supplemental was issued. Okay. And how is this hotel classed? You mentioned in the cap rates, you had 3 different classes. Where does this fit in?
It's definitely not a luxury hotel. It's extended stay. It would probably fall between full service and focus service. The lines on hotels are getting blurrier. A lot of people are moving to the select focus service. There's higher profit margins in those hotels and less expenses. But
Sure, but what does focus service mean, though?
Well, focus service, there's 2 different types. There's family and there's business. You'll see a lot of the amenities on the newer focus service that you would see in a full service hotel, minus things like, some of them won't have room service, although I do believe this one does. Pools, some of them don't have pools. This one does. I guess the restaurant in this one's a bit smaller than a full service hotel.
And so as it relates to room rates, would you be safe to say that an urban full service should have a higher rate than a limited service or focus service?
There's probably a lot of factors involved in that. Age of the hotel, upkeep, location, brand.
Well, in your parameters, does it show a difference?
It doesn't.
Okay. The pictures that you have put in here, did you take these yourself?
I did not.
Okay, so they're from the website?
Correct.
Did you have an opportunity to inspect?
I have driven by the hotel. I did not have an opportunity to inspect.
Okay, on page 9, the breakfast room, do you know how many seats are in there?
We have the license seats at 210, and I did have a breakdown of that. It's not in my brief. I would assume some of them are for the meeting rooms.
Right, and that's what I was going to ask. When you get a license for a hotel, it covers the entire hotel. It's not a 210 seat bar, correct?
Correct.
It's more like, well, I was in there, probably 35, 40 seats in there.
I'd say less than 100, probably closer to maybe, between 40 and 60.
Okay. And the design of this, are you characterizing this as a bar or a restaurant? I'm just wondering, without inspection, how it would be characterized.
Well, it is. I mean, they do classify it as a restaurant on their website. I mean, it's not a full service restaurant. There is a lounge.
So you're not aware that it's actually just mainly a breakfast room.
And that's the case with a lot of these hotels nowadays.
Okay, and you did say earlier that breakfast is included in the rates as you were describing the hotel, did you not?
That's correct.
On the rental rates, you've chosen 150, and did that come from the parameters?
We looked at some comparable hotels. There is some other extended stay hotels in the city, and we looked at what they were receiving on the reference date and used that in our determination.
On your page, sorry, I'll get to the right page. 37. You're showing the average daily rate for hotels, non-beverage hotels, at 118.73, and this is significantly higher. So how did it become higher?
Well, this is a newer hotel. It's branded as a higher end hotel. Of course, the average that you see at 118 is going to include a lot of older hotels, hotels that don't have a flag, things like that. So that's going to bring the average down. This, of course, is a brand new high-end hotel. We feel that it deserves something higher than the average. And once again, we did look at comparable hotels.
In the article you produced, it talks about a rack rate difference range of 139 to 199, followed by the phrase that these can be negotiated. In other words, they're meant to be negotiated. Did that come into any effect here?
Yeah, extended stay hotels always, I think, have that opportunity to negotiate a lower price based on longer extended stays, which of course drives the occupancy up, which is good for the hotel. And once again, deferring to the fact that we did look at other extended stay hotels to derive this rate.
Well, when you put this rate about I'm going to call this the rack rate. I'm sure you're familiar with that phrase, 139 to 199. That's the one when you go into a hotel room that's printed on the back side of the door, correct?
It can be, yes.
Because governments in most municipalities, I don't think Winnipeg is among them, require that the hotel operator post those rates. And the Hyatt is an international chain, so that's their requirement, to post the rates on the back of the door.
Okay.
You've seen that, haven't you?
I have seen that.
Yes. Have you ever paid that rate?
It's been a while since I've been in a hotel, but generally, I mean, with the, there's websites now, Expedia, etc. There's a range in hotel. Obviously, a Monday is going to cost less than a Friday night. There's very
right, and they post those rates because the special events that happen every so often, the governments don't want to see price gouging, and okay, so it's fair to say they're probably not getting 139 to 199 all the time, are they?
That's correct, but we did use a lower occupancy rate, which does, I think the RevPAR is the more important figure.
Okay, no, well, I'll get to that. Don't worry.
Okay.
Did you have a chance to actually check their website yourself to see what they're charging today for rooms?
Once again, that's post-reference. I do check periodically on the rates and what's happening in the marketplace, but that would be more relevant to next cycle.
Oh, I understand that, but it's just a double check, is it not, to see if you're in the ballpark, to see if you're matching a trend, right?
Yep. But we do have to take into account that the current situation is not the same as the situation on April 1st, 2018, and we don't know what the rates would have been. We can assume they would have been higher on April 1st, 2018.
Why would you assume that they would be higher?
Well, I think travel was a little more. I think we all know why.
Well, what you're talking about is probably the impact of COVID. But a question for you: you're running a hotel. If you discount your room rates during COVID, do you think you're going to attract more people? They still can't travel, so what's the point?
It's simple supply and demand. There are still people occupying hotel rooms.
Don't these people come from out of province, out of city, and they can't even travel? So what's the point of even thinking that there's a discount during COVID? Or
there's essential workers, and they're still competing against other hotels. There's essential workers. People have staycations. But once again, this is all post-reference. I'm trying to focus.
No, I understand. I think we can discuss trends, though, right?
Have the shorts been bought?
Now you're talking about occupancy rates. Your own information suggests or states that the owner is experiencing a 25% occupancy rate at this time. Now, what is the typical absorption period for a hotel after construction?
We've seen a lot of the newer hotels get up to 80% within 3 years, which is astounding. They actually say at 80% you should start adding rooms. It's almost the equivalent to 100% occupancy in a hotel.
Right. So
but yeah, 1301 Ellis has an extended stay hotel. It was over 80% within 3 years. The Hilton at the airport was above 80% within 3 years. So prior to, at the reference date, we were seeing these things ramp up very quickly.
Yeah, and okay, so you're saying 3 years, and I can tell you that our research indicated 2 to 4 years, so we are in agreement on that. Now, why is it assessed at 60% the minute they open the doors? That's not going to happen, will it?
Generally not immediately after opening doors, but like I said, we've been seeing these things outperform historical projections on ramping up periods. The average was 68. Newer hotels, of course, maybe right out of the gate, they're a bit lower, but people want to stay at new hotels and feel like that would be achieved fairly quickly.
Well, you're saying, but you call this a longer term stay. Now, in order to generate revenue for longer term stays, don't you have to begin by establishing relationships and contracts with people? And that doesn't happen overnight, does it?
If they didn't have a flag, I would agree with you, but because this is a Hyatt house, they have their central booking, they have people with rewards, etc. We tend to see these ones outperform the ones without flags.
But they still don't have the local traffic at all, do they? What do most long-term stay hotels in Winnipeg, who do they generally serve? Is it not generally First Nations?
That I don't know.
Okay.
Business, I would say business travelers.
Okay, but if you've got a business contract with someone, it doesn't happen overnight, does it? Like you got a local company based in Regina who sends their people to Winnipeg?
No, but they might use exclusively Hyatt hotels due to the rewards and whatnot, or have a pre-existing contract.
But the bottom line is, the model is not allowing for an absorption period. Is that correct?
Well, I can say this: if this hotel was 3 years old, we'd be probably defending a much higher assessment, probably near 13 to 15 million.
Well, earlier I asked you a question about when did you start the supplemental, which was about a week after they opened the doors. Now, a common response I've got from assessors on apartments is, well, they began renting in July, but we waited till December before we issued the sup because of an absorption period. Now, that's in multifamily. Do you not do that in hotel?
So I would assume, and I don't know multifamily that well, but they would go full value and then maybe put it in a couple months later, whereas we've discounted the value and put it in very close to the opening date.
Well, you've said you discounted the value, but I take exception to that, but we'll get into that. Going to your statement on page 3, so I'm just going to go down here in order, and then I've asked you already about the room rate and the occupancy rate. The food and beverage rate, now you're saying it's 210 licensed seats at $3,000 a seat. That's how that was calculated.
Correct.
And what's the other income?
It's just miscellaneous, ATM, parking, there's other various, the confectionery items.
Did you happen to see any budget information on this hotel? And I'm not putting you on the spot. I sent you some. Aside from that, have you seen any other budget information?
No, we haven't. We haven't even sent a request for information for this hotel yet because it was only built in 2020. I believe we'll be getting one, hopefully, in the next few months when we send out our requests.
Okay. I'm just wondering if you had the opportunity to compare the food and beverage income and the room rates with other properties of its type.
Yes.
Similarly
Once again,
located?
the average is over 3,000, and that includes a wide variety of hotels, limited service, older hotels, and extended stay. But of course, it does include full service as well.
Where in this statement do you deal with reservation fees? Is that the franchise fee?
Correct.
Well, has the department amended its parameters to account for third-party reservation systems?
Well, that would be showing any room revenue. That would be lower.
Room revenue is lower.
Yeah.
So what's the calculation then?
Well, for what?
You're saying it's shown in the room revenue. I don't see a calculation.
Well, inherently, if you get less for a room, it will show up on your revenue statement.
What are the third parties charging? Do you know?
I don't know offhand. We've used comparisons to actual data that we're seeing in the marketplace. Other hotels are playing by the same set of rules as this one.
Well, if the operator told you that his rack rate was $139 to $199, and we know that Booking and Expedia and the similar charge between 13 and 18%, if you do the math, doesn't that come significantly lower?
I don't know offhand.
139 becomes about $114. And you're still at 150, correct?
Once again, we're using comparisons to other hotels that are similar in nature within the city.
And if you backed out the free breakfast and put it into the food and beverage, did you do that calculation?
No.
Okay. On the question of the
Sorry, can I stop you for 1 minute? There's somebody having a whole conversation in the background. Who is it?
Not on my end.
You guys hear? Okay.
Let me just see if it's here. Was it a good conversation?
I don't know, but it's going to be picked up by the mics and recorded. So
I got this. I don't think it's me. I got this special mic here.
Yeah, I don't know who it is, but whoever that was, if it's not your turn to talk, maybe mute your mic then, if it's coming from behind you.
Then we'll find out it's me. My dog is
I'm home alone, so it's unless the cat learned to talk. Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's fine. Now, I was looking
I wasn't accusing you. I didn't say it was you.
No, my dog is going to come and harass me in a minute, so it's fine.
Okay, sorry.
The property taxes you have at $232,000. Now, the actual property tax. For $232,000, would you disagree with me if I told you that represents an assessed value of $9.6 million?
For what cycle?
Well, it's not the question of cycles. It's just, is the math. Does that represent an assessment of $9.6 million?
I haven't done the calculations. I did look at some comparable hotels. So let's not forget, this is a 2017 tax rate.
Right, okay, oh, sorry, I'll use the higher tax rate from that year.
I looked at a couple other $11 million hotels, and it was in the same ballpark.
Sorry, 9.3 million at the 2018 rate, 9.6 million at the 2020 rate. Now, Whitley, are you suggesting that between 2018 and the current time, the value of this type of hotel increased by approximately 30%?
Well, we don't know what the assessment would have been in 2018 had this property been built. But we have to assume it would have been lower.
Well, if you're using the same parameters for this hotel, whether it's an 18 or 20, you're also going to look at the market for this hotel. Did the market for this hotel increase 30% between 2018 and 2020?
So you're saying hotels went up 30%?
Yeah, well, that's what this data tells me.
Okay, so we did see big gains in the hotel since the recession in 2008. Hotels actually went up higher than they've ever gone, at a higher rate than they've ever used, that they've ever achieved. It's very plausible that the assessment would have been about $9 million in 2018.
Well, every hotel I represent went down between 2018 and 2020. So I'm just wondering if you're going to say that this one would have gone up 30%.
See, we were seeing hotels go up in that cycle, so.
You had discussed third-party capitalization rates on page 4. Do you know how CBRE and Colliers and Cushman calculate their cap rates for hotels?
Not offhand, but I feel like you're going to let me know.
Well, you're not aware, like, first of all, the city uses what's called the Rushmore method, correct? To deduct.
Correct.
You're not aware that private providers do not use that system generally?
Cash flow?
That they do not deduct the business value from the hotel generally?
Okay.
Well, I'm just wondering if you are aware that when they provide these are done by agents who aren't as educated in these calculations. And I'm just wondering if you knew that, and if now knowing it, would you put any weight on it?
Would that not make it's possible. We're still not at the low end of the range, so I feel like even taking that into account, I feel like we're.
Well, I don't think we're disagreeing on the cap, but just it's a point of clarification that there are different methods of capitalizing hotels, and what we're using is one that is designed to take out the business part of it, and practitioners, brokers, do not use the same method. I'm just wondering if you are aware of that.
It's a good point, and I agree with you, but that's why there's a range. If you ask 4 different appraisers to value this hotel, you'll probably get 4 different values, which is why we have the range, and we are pretty much up the middle of the range. So I feel like cap rate's fine.
Last question I have is, are you relying on the income approach?
We are.
Thank you.
Based on comparisons to other hotels.
Thank you. And I don't know if Mr. Mercury had any questions.
Just a couple of questions. With reference to your brief, you'd referenced this article from August of 2020.
Correct.
And this is just to deal with the COVID-related issue, I assume.
I actually put it in just mostly for the description of the hotel, and mostly the description.
Okay.
It's close reference. I will.
Right. So just one point of clarification, you're obviously looking at market data in the reference year of 2018, but would you agree that you are also looking at, there are certain elements in this valuation exercise that you do look at the taxation year? For example, the physical characteristics of the building, of course, you look at in the taxation year, not in the reference year, right?
Well, of course, this building wasn't even built at the reference date, so it's
Right.
obvious that we are looking at physical.
Right, but for all buildings, regardless of whether it's new construction or not,
Oh, yeah, that's accurate.
you're always looking at the current
Current
taxation
physical
year,
condition.
right?
Yeah.
And similarly, you're also looking at any land use regulations that exist in the current taxation year, not in the reference year. So you're looking at the zoning, for example, in 2020, as opposed to what it may have been in 2018, correct?
That's probably a little more of a gray area. There's grandfather clauses, etc., but definitely current physical condition, I would agree.
Well, physical condition, and you're familiar with, for example, Section 13 of the Municipal Assessment Act, which actually gives which indicates that an assessor is to change an assessment if there are certain changes in the taxation year or in an off year. For example, there's new construction, property is destroyed, there's changes in the physical characteristics, changes in zoning, etc. That would actually give rise to a supplemental assessment, potentially, correct?
Yeah, I mean, if this building or a building burnt down, we would definitely adjust the assessment.
Right. And similarly, if there were a down zoning or a change in the zoning that would limit the permitted uses of that particular property, you would also make an adjustment, correct?
That I don't know offhand. I would have to speak with our legal for that.
Okay, no, and fair enough. And I'm referencing the sections in the Municipal Assessment Act, in fairness to you, but one of the sections is Section 13.1, sub 5, sub B, sub 5, which is changes in zoning or permitted uses applicable to the property. So the reason for that, of course, is that you can't be taxed on something, on a use that is not permitted. So your highest and best use is obviously impacted. Would you follow that?
I would say on a case-by-case basis, that could affect it. It's not always black and white.
Right. So we're dealing with 2020, of course, and you will agree that there were a number of government mandated changes to the use of these types of facilities to deal with the pandemic, correct?
I mean, we all know what's going on
Right.
currently.
Right, just generally, but with respect to common areas, and you'll see in Mr. Neufeld's brief, he's actually included some photographs. If you have his brief, just pull it up. It is at page, now bear with me for one moment. Yes, it's at pages 8, page 8 of his brief. You'll note that there are actually signs posted on the pool area, for example. The pool was closed due to the code red restrictions in place at that time, as well as there are signs posted in the eating area that that area is also sectioned off. So in other words, it's not a permitted use to have people congregating in that area in 2020. You'd agree with that?
I understand what you're saying. However, a lot of these restrictions are not permanent. We know that restaurants opened up in the summer. I don't think it would be prudent to start changing assessments every few months based on temporary restrictions. And yeah, but that once again is a gray area.
When you say temporary, to be clear, these are restrictions that have been in place for the majority of the year 2020, and certainly when this restaurant opened right through to the end of 2020, correct?
The restrictions have been changing. I believe each restriction is 3 or 4 weeks, and then they're reviewed. They have changed numerous times already.
Okay. Are you aware of any hotels in the city of Winnipeg that have in-person dining facilities open?
Not currently, but in the summer they did.
With restrictions though, not full capacity.
Correct.
And what about swimming pools?
I believe gyms were open in the summer, so I believe swimming pools were too.
With limited capacity, correct?
Most likely, yes.
Yeah. And into the fall, there was much heavier restrictions in place.
Of course. And going forward, we don't know what's going to happen. So.
And ultimately, you would agree that the prospective investor looking at this property would obviously have to take into account immediate risk on his investment, at least in the near term, when looking to potentially acquire this property, correct?
I would say generally hotel investors are looking further down the line for returns, 10, 15 years. It's more of a longer term play than other property types.
All right. Okay, well, I'll leave it at that. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are finished with those questions. Would anyone like a short 5-minute recess before we begin the applicant's presentation?
I'm good either way.
Yeah, sure, fine.
Okay, so let's just take 5 minutes quickly, and then we will begin the applicant's.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, I'm going to call this meeting back to order. Before we proceed, Mr. Diamond, do you have any questions for the assessment?
I do have. So, Mr. Brown, I guess my first notification note that property is estimated on the income approach, and you've done your calculations on page 3.
That's correct.
And then using the income approach, you have to use an estimate because this hotel was not open for business, so you couldn't use actual numbers even if you wanted to.
That's correct. We've used.
And in fact, though, the city, the model always takes into account basically the model, not actual numbers.
There's a lot of background noise, Madam Chair.
Yeah. Do we know? Perhaps if you're not speaking, unmute your mics.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Diamond, could you please repeat that last question?
Yeah, I was saying that when the city uses their model, they never ever take into account actual numbers. They always use model numbers. Is that not correct?
For hotels, we actually don't have a model. It's all done site specific.
Okay.
Of course, there is no site specific for this, so we've deferred to comparable hotels. And near the end of my evidence, there is that guide to valuing hotels. So we've deferred to that, and we've looked at some more comparable hotels to justify those numbers.
Okay. And how many rooms would you have compared in all those other hotels to arrive at an income that you've attributed to this one?
So we look at the comparable hotels and we see what their average daily rate and their occupancy is, which is shown at the top of my income workup. So for this, we've used 150 average daily rate and 60% occupancy. Both are a bit lower than the true comparables for this hotel, the extended stays, the newer ones. But we felt because the hotel was a bit newer, we brought those down a bit, and we can see the RevPAR, which is revenue per available room, at 90, which fits in with the comparables, although it's slightly lower than an already established hotel.
Okay, I understand that, but it'd be helpful if we saw what your comparables were, so we know if in fact they were fair comparables. We only know that you use comparables, but we're not aware if they were equivalent hotels, better hotels, or inferior hotels.
So, I mean, we try not to compare assessments, of course, but you're right, I could have put the actuals for some of the hotels. There's a very similar hotel list at 1301 Ellis. The unfortunate part about that is there's actually 3 hotels on the same site, so it's hard to separate it. But there is some other extended stay hotels near the airport, and like I said, if if this hotel was built 3 or 4 years ago, I feel we'd be defending an assessment between 13 and 15 million.
So your comparable hotels all have the same amenities. For example, they've had gyms, they've had complimentary breakfast included and things like that.
Kitchenettes in the rooms, etc. Yeah.
Swimming pools.
Sorry.
Swimming pools.
Yep.
So they all had all those features.
I mean, they don't all have all the amenities, but we try and pick the closest comparables when we do an assessment like this.
Because I guess the difficulty we have is we're using your estimate or you're defending your estimate, but we don't know how you got that estimate. You're just telling us you got an estimate, and the numbers themselves are there, but I don't know how those numbers got there.
Evidence. So at the rear of my evidence shows the averages across the city.
But we don't know what you're comparing them to.
Well, I mean, other hotels in essence, but so we've used that document to derive the numbers, and then we've double checked it with comparisons.
Okay, and we used cap rates. I'm looking at your cap rates on page number 4, and you indicated when you're Mr. Muko was questioning you that this hotel, in fact, was not probably an urban full service. It was somewhere between an urban full service and a select focus service.
So since then, I've noticed that on page, let me just find it, page 29 of my evidence.
Okay.
They do say that it is a full service hotel. So near the bottom, just under the picture of the pool on page 29, it says the
Okay, so you're saying, so underneath the pool it says it's a full service hotel, but it feels like home.
Yes, correct. So, I mean, lately the lines between full service, select service, luxury have been all getting a little bit blurrier as they try and find segments that are unserviced by a typical historical hotel designations. So over the past 10 years, we've been finding that the newer hotels are really blurring the lines between the segments.
Okay, so you feel that the 8.5 cap rate is a fair cap rate?
Yes.
Okay, that's my questions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Upton, do you have any questions?
Just a question on the food and beverage. This restaurant, is it a full service restaurant in terms of a menu available in the evening and so on? In normal times?
During normal times, a lot of their food and beverage revenue would be done through catering for business, seminars, business gatherings. Of course, generally lunch is included in those. That's where we see a lot of their business from. Of course, there is room service and then the lounge. We all know that after a business meeting, it's always nice to go and have a beverage, but that's what we would be, in our estimation, that's where we think that revenue would come from.
So somebody could walk in off the street, not a guest in the hotel, and go into the restaurant and order a meal in the evening, can they?
I don't know about like an actual meal from the restaurant. I would assume they have a menu. There isn't a lot online. I would assume a lot of their revenue is going to be from beverages and catering. And they do have room service, so they must have some type of menu.
So when you derive this figure, comparing it to other hotels, it's in the same category as the hotels you compared it to.
Yeah, I mean, we see a wide range. Like a luxury hotel would be doing somewhere closer to $5,000 to $6,000 per seat. And then we've got lower end hotels that wouldn't achieve that at all.
So it's more in the middle between those?
Yeah, so the average among all rooms hotels was, I believe, 3,200 roughly. We've discounted that a bit by about $200 at $3,000 per seat.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
My question has already been asked, so thank you very much. Okay, so we can move on to the applicant's presentation now.
So I have some follow-up questions. Can you provide us with a definition of a full-service hotel?
I mean, there's, even within full service, there's layers. There's luxury, which is going to include valet service, fine dining.
Okay, but there's no valet service here. There's no concierge here. Is there?
Like I said,
Is there turn down service?
it's getting harder to define newer hotels, but on page 29, they do call themselves a full service hotel.
Of course they do, just like a Hyundai calls themselves a luxury vehicle. But that's their sales pitch. But there is no concierge, there's no turn down service. Is there a wine menu?
I would assume. I mean,
Have you seen it?
no, but
Okay. And you haven't seen the food menu?
no, but they have room service.
So you're not aware that the bar consists of 6 bottles of spirits in dispensers and some bottled beer and house wine. Is that full service to you?
I mean, we don't know what. I mean, I can't speak to that. I haven't.
Is there a bellboy?
So
Someone to carry your luggage?
on page 10 of my evidence shows the bar.
Right.
There's definitely more than 10 bottles of spirit.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Perhaps you and I may go to different bars. Maybe not.
Put this one together.
Yeah, but there's no bellboy in this.
No, this is not a luxury hotel.
Okay. I just want to make sure we're clear on that. Thank you. That was just my follow-up.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Neufeld, you can proceed with your
Yes,
presentation.
I've provided 2 sets of documents, and I have shared these with the assessor, and we have had some good discussion on it. So, and it's always a pleasure dealing with Jason. He's always very easy to talk to. So we're not straying off what we've already discussed with him. What we would like to do is the first document we did, which was our brief, we'll just defer to the rebuttal because I think it's far more pointed. I was aware of the workup. The assessor shared it with us prior to the assessment, and I just had some delays in getting some responses from the owner on some information. So the second document I've provided is what I'll mainly be referring to, and start off by, I guess it's not page numbered, but the third page is, I just went to the Hyatt website and tried to book a room just to show where the rates are, and it is today, and you can see $110 was the number. And then I changed my reservation time to high season, which is on the 5th page, and it raised the rate to $123. Now that's the lowest room, and then you can see that the higher rooms in that case went up as high as $142. Current prices. Now the point here is that this is the way it was designed. It would have been lower 2 years ago. And we don't have, this is a different hotel. The assessors admitted that the lines are blurry on what constitutes what description of hotel. And the hotels are getting less and less within a class as more and more individualized. This was designed to be on beside a shopping area and to cater to the crowd that wanted to be near the shopping center, specifically, going to IKEA, maybe from Northwestern Ontario or other parts of Manitoba. And that's where its market is aimed at. And it's a low rate hotel. Now, the COVID thing is a non-factor in the rates. As a matter of fact, most hotels are charging higher rates right now because there are fewer of them that are open, and they know that it doesn't matter what rate they charge. That will not be part of the decision-making process. The decision-making process is done by the government. You can't travel, and that's the impact. So I think that there's a good comfort level on the rates that they're actually getting. And yes, I know they're post-reference, but they would have been lower otherwise. The actual rate, and this is what I was waiting for, is showing on our first page, is their average rate is $116 a night right now. Now, going back to the reservation selection, there's at the bottom of the page, there's from booking.com, and this is on their website. And how much commission do I pay? The average commission is 15% from booking. I checked with our client and he says he pays between 13 and 18%, and 25% of bookings come through third-party booking agents. It's a nature of the game. Now, the thing to bear in mind is that the booking companies have limited rooms that they can actually rent. They have a supply. Once they're gone, they can't book any more rooms. But the Hyatt pays not only their own franchise fee for their own system, but on top of that, they pay an additional booking charge, and it is fairly high for this type of service. And I don't think that the assessor's system has caught up with this change. I know booking's been around for probably 8-9 years, at least I've been using them that long. There are 5 major problems with this assessment. And on our first page, I've detailed some calculations. And my concern here is that all the years I've been working in the tax business, there's been an incredible reluctance on the board to delve into these hotels. And I'm not blaming anyone. I just think that it's a very complicated method of valuation that requires a long hearing, and at the Board of Revision, we don't have that time. Well, today we do because we're the only people there, but which is why I think we would like to get this resolved here today rather than delay it going to the municipal board. Now, the 5 areas, and one of the areas I'm not dealing with today is COVID. And there's actually a very interesting reason for it. I think that the problems related to COVID are already part of opening a new hotel. So the 5 areas are the mistake in the taxes, the mistake in the commissions, the mistake in the food sales, the mistake in the room rate, and the vacancy rate. Those are the 5 issues. And what I've done with each of them is just given you the number. There's an adjustment number. For example, the first one, the tax mistake. How much does that change the value by? $320,000. It's at the bottom of the page 1 in red. And then we've given you a summary of all the problems. Now, some of these problems overlap. For example, if you correct the room rate, the tax issue is corrected by itself. But I'll just briefly go through each of these. And none of the numbers have been changed except those marked in red. I'm really trying to make this simple, more for myself, because I want to be able to explain this properly. So the first column, the taxes, down in the red, you can see we've changed the numbers on property tax from $232,000 to $257,000, and we've merely used the current assessment at the going tax rate of the time. Now, you heard in questioning what my statement, which I inserted into questioning, was that generally I've seen the hotel values going down on the ones I represent. I think there's one exception on that, and there was a sale. And we're still debating that one, but the resolved ones all went down. And that's just an indication of a tightening markets. Manitoba is too heavily populated by drinking establishments in their hotels. That's a function of our liquor laws dating back to the 50s. And as a result, our hotel valuations are stuck with that. We're one of the few taxing municipalities that has such a high ratio of beverage in our hotels due to the way our laws worked. And that's always gets it to a confusing factor when you start looking at a hotel like this one, which was not intended to be a drinking establishment. It was intended as a lodging establishment. So that matter is rather simple. Those are the real tax numbers. That's what should have been used. The next is the commission issue. And I take exception. I think that the assessor did not present that information on outside commissions, saying that that was a net rate. I saw that nowhere in his calculation. These are costs that have begun to come up and weren't never part of the model and must be. And again, that's because the model is skewed in Manitoba to drinking hotels. And Booking.com doesn't book rooms in those. It's going to be travel style hotels. And that's, this is a real thing. And this is what's getting them up and getting their occupancy rates up, is trying to sell as many rooms as you can. And the Expedia and Booking.com, what they do is they extend your reach. And so that number in red is 166,000. And that's an average of a 15% commission on 25% of their sales. Those are actual numbers. That they pay 13 to 18%. And there's a rate difference between Expedia and Booking, and it just depends on the process. For example, Booking actually does a guaranteed sale on it, so they can afford to go with lower commissions. Whereas some of the other ones, if the reservation falls through, there's no commission, so they offset that by having higher rates. We've just used a median of 15%, and again, it's 25%. A badged hotel is going to have a higher rate of third-party commissions than an independent hotel. Many of my independent hotel operators who are not drinking establishments just refuse to even bother with things like Booking, but just because it takes too much out of their bottom line. So if that is corrected, that is an adjustment of 1.66 million off the value. And that should be done. The next problem is the food. And you heard the assessor's evidence that it was just an estimate of $3,000 per seat. Well, there's 40 seats in this place. The rest are the entire hotel. When a hotel gets its liquor license, it covers the whole hotel. And the rate of 210 would include the meeting rooms, the lobby, the public areas, and even service to the rooms. So that's not an accurate way of counting it. One should have just focused solely on the service area, which are the 40 seats in the breakfast room. And the breakfast room is impacted by sales because breakfast is included with your room stay. So it's not going to generate a lot of income. The actual budget for it when they opened was, on the second page, $300,000. And that's what we've used, $300,000. And in doing so, of course, we also reduce the costs on there. But it works out to a reduction of about $75,000 off the NOI. And this can be characterized as, I'm going to use the same language the assessor used, the fact that not all hotels are the same. This one is designed differently. It was not designed to sell a lot of liquor. It has a very, very limited menu. One more fact. It's not open to the public. It's only open to hotel guests. See, I live close by here. I can't go down there for a drink because I'm not a hotel guest. And that's different from other hotels that are open to the public and want the public to come in to sell them. And that's why the numbers are low. So that's something that I don't think exists in the parameters. And I did forget to ask that question. But on that basis, that particular mistake would amount to a change of $824,000 in the assessment down below. All other factors remain the same. The next issue is the room rate. Now, I understand the argument that we're looking at current numbers. We are, but they establish a trend. If it's 116 today and it did not exist in 2018, would it have been higher or lower? To look at other rates, we've looked at a number of other rates, but ones that are out close to the airport get a different rate because they serve a different market. There's only really two hotels that I can think of that have been designed to be in the shopping center. This one and the other one across the street from IKEA, the name escapes me. It is a new concept here. It is a different market, and predictions of rates vary. In the market, hotels are correspond to some sort of outside influence. For example, we all know there's airport hotels. We know that there's downtown business hotels. We know there's drinking hotels. This one is a shopping center hotel, a different type of product. So it is basically, like, your airport hotel is going to be influenced by passenger rates, whereas your retail one will be influenced by retail trends. And if there's an IKEA that draws in people from outside the city, it's good. But our IKEA isn't getting business from Saskatchewan because those people are going to Calgary because they don't have sales tax there. So a lot of our shopping, our big ones, are more displacement shopping, not attraction shopping, and that affects how many room nights you're going to rent out. The next issue was vacancy, and we think that you've heard it all. They're experiencing 25%. We all agreed. I said 2 to 4 years for full absorption. The assessor said about 3. We're agreeing on that. When it's fully absorbed, he said 80. Our projections from the owner was 65. Does the Hyatt know more than Jason? Maybe, maybe not. But that's their projection. So they're going to hit 65%, either after 3 years or when COVID is over, and it's going to happen at the same time. I think the only difference there is going to be the curve. If the COVID didn't exist, you'd probably start at 25%. Next year would be in the 40s or low 50s, and then the next year would be the high 50s, low 60s, and third year you're full. With COVID, you're going to be flat at 25% until it's over, and then it'll spike up to where it should have been all along. Maybe this year it'll spike up to 50%. And so all we're dealing with here is a curve in this case, because we're already starting at 0. Not a case where something wiped you out. So my math on it is 50%, and that would be the 25% first year, around 45% the following year, and then 65% the third year, and that evens out at 50%. I was also only looking for the length of the assessment cycle, because I don't disagree with the assessor that once fully absorbed, we may see a different rate. But this is not a question of anything else except for opening a new hotel. If you sold it today on what it's earning, it's not going to sell on its current value. And by the way, that's an entirely different issue on what it would sell for. And it's called an investment value, not an assessable value. And it would depend on the investor's window as to how long they see their investments coming to maturity. And hotels are notoriously small windows because it's a riskier business. And they don't want to see something in the here and now. So it will go lower if it was sold today. Now, when that by itself, I should backtrack here. The room rate correction is a $5.5 million deduction, resulting in an assessment of $6.2 million. If it were just a vacancy rate correction, it's a $4 million reduction to a value of $7.7 million. All of those combined, of course, put us into the negative. But I agree. All of these combined actually is a reduction of $10 million to a value of $1.6 million. But there are overlaps. That second page is just merely showed for a demonstration. Had the site hit their projections when they opened, the value based on the model and where we agree on would have been about 9.8 million, and that's my last column. Had it worked out, but that actually doesn't include the commission rate, which we discovered at a later date, which would have reduced that 9.8 million by 1.6 million. So 8.2 million would have been based on projections. So I'm just trying to provide this as simplified as possible. It's an a la carte menu. I thought that was appropriate. You can't pick every column, but I think several of these columns should be seriously considered. And I think the strongest among them is the room rate. My belief here is that this hotel does not fit the model, doesn't fit a product type that the assessment department has a lot of backup information on, and for the next 2 years, I think a fair number would be a fairly significant reduction, and with reassessment, of course, the numbers will change. And so what we are looking for is, I think that, as I said, the strongest issue is the room rate issue. The vacancy rate issue is probably going to track along with that. So there will be some overlapping there. I can't see them combined, but the commission problem is real and the food problem is real. And the taxes would be corrected with a lower assessment. So that's not an issue in the long run. But so the commissions and the food is a reduction of 2.4 million. And then the room rate is a further reduction of 5.5 million. That would actually put our value at about 4 million. I think that on a sharper valuation, or similar to sharp practice, that's what we would think should be done. However, there's some room for moderation here, because at the end of the cycle, it will perform better. So we think a fair value is likely in the $6 to $7 million range at this point to stay in effect for the cycle until it's reassessed. Just background information, the picture here, I was actually in the hotel and everything is closed. So on page 8 is the breakfast room and the pool area. I did tour the bar area, and yes, I was exaggerating a bit about 6 bottles of spirits. It is a very, very small bar. It's an afterthought. It's, how do I say this without being embarrassed? Here, I'll show you. There's my bar. It's way bigger than the hotel's. I don't know what that says about me, but my wine list is far superior as well. It is not designed for that style of operation. And I didn't mention the impact of COVID really once as a change. Like I said, it comes tied in with absorption of a new property. They had horrible timing, and as I see. Going back to that issue again, it's the curve. It'll be a different curve. They're just going to grow stagnant for the first year and a little blip upwards rather than a smooth increase. These sorts of hotels, their primary source of business are contract traveling. And the assessor made some general comments, and I did check these out. They're not correct. The contract ones will be local based. There are some that come through Hyatt, but they're not staying by the shopping center. They're staying near the airport or in a business area. There's no business being practiced here. This is going to be more of a local user thing. And the largest group of contract renters are First Nations, and they generally it's in waiting for for hospital beds to open up. Most of my clients who have those contracts aren't feeling much of an impact during COVID at all, because their contracts are still remain in place. The Hyatt has none of these. And now they don't have the luxury or the option of establishing more, because there's none available. So that's why I'm saying you open the door, you get 25%, you develop your contract work, and you get up to 45%. That's the part that's going to get delayed. And so, as I say again, it's the curve instead of a straight line increase. That's why a 50% occupancy is probably the best prediction. That's my presentation, and I really hope it's not too confusing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mercury. Did you have anything to add before we go into questions?
Not much to add. I just, as Mr. Newfield indicated, the presentation he's made highlights the fact that his valuation simply reflects what a startup hotel will be facing. The point of my questioning and some of the points that I raised really were to the extent that the board has questions regarding whether it can take into account COVID restrictions, and if the board believes that that is a relevant determination, I would suggest that clearly it can. It is, while we're dealing with a 2018 evaluation date, we have to look at the physical and or legal restrictions in the current taxation year. And those legal restrictions include the permitted uses in the property, including physical distancing requirements and limitations on dining and recreational areas within the building. So I just add that bit of information for the board's consideration. Those are my only comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Brown, do you have questions?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
So Mr. Neufeld, looking at your rebuttal evidence or your supplementary evidence, quickly on page 3, okay, so you mentioned that COVID doesn't have an effect on the rates.
That's what I stated, that the impact of COVID isn't seen on the rates.
That seems to be in opposition of a standard supply and demand theory where obviously supply is a lot higher right now, demand is a little lower or quite a bit lower. Would that wouldn't affect the rates?
Well, supply and demand works in an economy that's in balance. COVID has unbalanced the economy. So that I think that's very basic economics. It's an outside factor. So you relook at your supply and demand and say, does this still make sense? Can you, like the concept of supply and demand is if your supply is higher than your demand, you can change your prices, increase demand. Will changing the price increase demand? No, you still can't travel.
But you're still in competition with other hotels. Increasing your price when supply is high and demand is low is not going to yield.
Well, here's the point. You're in business and you're losing $100,000 a month. You drop your price so you can lose $120,000 a month because that's all that's going to happen. So the operators aren't doing it. They know that there's nothing they can do to influence that stay. They can, I'm going to answer this anecdotally. I've booked a holiday in September. I'm really hoping it's going to work out. I looked around for my favorite hotel. Normally we pay about $200. It's at $350. I booked it because it's there. It's my favorite hotel. It works for me. And my anecdotal evidence is that that's what the traveler is experiencing now in COVID. It's not going to be, shall I book my hotel because I can get it $10 or $20 cheaper? No, it's can I even go? And if I can go, I'm going to pick the one that works for me.
Well, as an economics major, I do not agree with you, but
let's provide some background information on that, externalities and supply and demand.
It's all post reference anyway, so we won't get into it. I will just note on your page 3, your rates. I noticed you picked Monday, February 1st and Tuesday, February 2nd. Typically, 2 of the lower demand days, generally the cheaper days.
That's correct. But if you note further on, I went to the highest day, which is Canada Day.
It doesn't show that.
Oh, it's on the last entry, right above the booking.com page. June 30th, July 3rd, $123.
Yeah, but there's no rates on the booking. The rates above it are from the Hyatt website.
Right. No, but okay. On that page, if you're looking at the Hyatt rates range from $123 to $142.
Yeah, but there's no dates for those.
In the black box. You see the dates?
No, I don't.
You found the best price.
30th
June, 123. And that's high season.
So June 30, Wednesday.
Well, it's over the,
I'll give you Canada Day. Okay.
yeah, Canada Day, I think, was a Thursday, so it would have been a long weekend. I wanted to go over the extra long weekend, just to, this is what, and it's going to also be in around the time when the X is usually held.
Okay. So back to your first page, you have 8 different valuations, I believe. 9.
Well, some are just summaries. I think that there's 5 columns, and then the rest are just different variations on them.
Okay, I'm not going to go through all of them, but I do have a few questions. So your first one, taxes corrected,
Yes,
and you've adjusted that to 257,000 and 57,000 respectively,
that's correct.
and that's based on the current assessment at 2018 mill rate.
Yes, that's correct.
So I think what you're saying is that you do believe that this property was worth $11.7 million in 2018?
No, not at all. I'm just saying that there has to be a relationship between the tax you put. I mean, you know very well that when you put together your workups for properties that have been open for a while, that you refer back to the actual taxes.
Correct.
And in this case, the number you've put is, you said it yourself, came from a formula, and your formula doesn't match the valuation. It should have been close to that number. And if we had come with I think I mentioned to you that it works out to an assessment of about 9.3 million rather than 11.7. So if your tax numbers had been, say, 11.2 million, 11 million, based on that, I'd say, well, yeah, I mean, that's fine, that's okay. But this one was really far out.
So, but for today, I believe you're at the end of your presentation, you reconcile a figure around high 5s, low 6 million.
Yeah, I think the strongest numbers would indicate somewhere between 6.2 and 7.7 million, and in doing so, then the taxes would drop a little bit lower than we have stated, and then you would actually have to increase it back up. So, say for example, if we accept that just the room rate's corrected at 6.2 million, you'd have to actually adjust it up by about 300,000 for the lower tax load. This is about, I mean, this is what they call a moving target, right? You change one rate and then everything else changes on you.
There's a lot of moving parts in these, especially when we're working with percentages. That brings me to my next question. There's some of these values where you've adjusted the income, but you haven't adjusted the undistributed expenses.
Correct. And you're referring to the food issue.
Correct.
Right. Now, in a hotel operation, the food is viewed as contribution to overhead because the building is already there. The space is already there, so your occupancy costs aren't considered. And I don't know if you know my background, but I owned restaurants for a long time, and we competed against hotels, and their fixed costs were so much better because the building was already there, the manager was already there, the infrastructure was there, and all they had to do was pay for food and labor. And then you're left with a contribution to overhead. So if you look at the primes on this, if we deal with the primes at about 75%, and then the controllables being all contribution to overhead, there are really no additional costs. Your primes here, for example, are food and beverage at 35%. Your food is probably running about 27-28% on food, and the rest of that is for things like napkins and dishwashing soap. And the food wages at 40% is generally, these should be around 30%. So you've already factored in management and maintenance costs on this. So I'm very, very comfortable with those numbers just from my own experience. Primes, which are food and labor, 60%. Controllables, 10%. Occupancy, 10%, 8 to 10% profit thereafter. So we already had a deduction of 75%. I think we're dead on there with no other adjustments.
Okay, one last question regarding the booking commissions. So our rates are derived from comparable hotels that also use these sites, and what we're using are the actual revenues. So would you not agree that it's already net of those commissions?
Well, I haven't seen the statements on the ones that you're using and to see where they're coming out.
Well, there's actually some privacy issues with supplying INEs
Right.
for
I know.
hotels, and that
Well,
actually Mr. Diamond's question earlier. So yeah, we can't include income and expense statements for other hotels due to privacy and.
Right. And I think sitting here and going through this, and I mentioned earlier that it's not add them all up, some replace others. So let's just put it this way. I think it's fair to say that if you go with the actual rate, return rate of $116, you're probably covering off that commission already. And if you don't, then, this is why it's an a la carte menu. If you believe the taxes and the commissions and the food are wrong, then you can deduct 2.7 million. But if you go to the room rate problem, I think it addresses most of those issues. It does deal with the taxes. It does deal with the food. It does deal with the commission issue, I think. So again, I apologize if it's not too confusing and overlapping, but it's just that I found 5 distinct issues, and each one of them is a variable that affects the other one. Putting my mind to it, I would probably be fairly more firm at a number of 6.232 million plus 320,000 on a higher tax rate with a value of 6,552,000, 6,552. That would be, sometimes I only think about these things when I try them out loud. That would be the first column on taxes turning into a positive adjustment rather than a negative adjustment, and then adding it to 6.2 million on fixing the room rate.
Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Diamond, do you have any questions?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Mr. Upton?
No, I have no questions. Thank you.
Nor do I. Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody. Is there a need for summary?
No, thank you.
I probably am just going to repeat myself, but sometimes when you explain something, you you rethink what you've said, and I'm not rethinking what I said. I think what we're looking at here is a major problem on absorption of a first-year hotel, which would be bad, COVID or not. Number 2 problem we have is that it's a style that doesn't fit into the parameters, and you can see that the actual earned income is significantly lower than what the assessment department has. The other issues on the food, the commissions, and the taxes, they generally get resolved if you could put in the right rate. For example, if you look at my column on putting in the right room rate, we've used a percentage in food and beverage, 487,000, rather than the actual budget of 300,000 and the assessor's 630,000. So the complexity of this style of valuation causes confusion. And that's probably why these things require far more time to work on. At the end of the day, I think the big problem is that room rate, and fixing that fixes the other problems. And our final value is 6,552,000, which is the room rate correction, and a lower tax rate, which brings that slightly up. And I don't know if Mr. Mercury has anything else to add.
No further comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
I'm going to now close the hearing. Good morning.
Okay, everyone have a good day.
Hi.
Bye. Bye.